in Zion. There is nothing good that it will withhold from them that walk uprightly. For the Lord God is a sun and a shield. There is nothing good that it will withhold from them that walk uprightly. Magnify him this morning. Exalt him for what he said to do. Because upon this altar, grace is available. Let's receive fresh grace for intercession. Let's receive fresh spirit of grace for intercession and supplication upon this mountain. Let's seek an encounter for transformation on the altar of prayer. Let's see an encounter via the word this morning. Lift up your voice, speak unto the Lord. I will not remain the same way I enter into this sanctuary. I shall be transformed to another man. Father, we thank you. We give you all the praise. In Jesus' mighty name we have prayed. Let's welcome the praise team.
Elohim, Elohim, Jehovah, you are God. Elohim, Elohim, Jehovah, you are Lord. Elohim, 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 Jehovah, you are Lord. Elohim, Elohim, Jehovah, you are Elohim, 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 Jehovah, you are Lord. Elohim, Elohim, Jehovah, you are Lord. Almighty God, all-powerful God, Almighty God, all-powerful God, you are worthy to receive all our praise. You reign forevermore. Almighty God, all-powerful God, Almighty God, all-powerful God, you are worthy to receive all our praise. You reign. Almighty Father, all-powerful God, Almighty God, all-powerful God, you are worthy to receive. Yes, you reign. Almighty Father, so powerful, you are so mighty, you are worthy to receive all our praise. You reign, Almighty Father, all powerful, so mighty in power, so mighty in glory. You are worthy, Lord. You are Lord, that's worthy of praise. Oh, you reign forevermore. You reign forevermore. Oh, you reign forevermore. You reign forevermore. Oh, you reign forever and ever and ever and ever. Forevermore. worthy to receive all our praise. Yes, you reign. Almighty Father, you alone are worthy. All powerful God, you are worthy to receive all our praise. You reign
forevermore.
Oh, you reign forevermore.
You reign forevermore.
Oh, you reign forever and ever and ever.
Forevermore.
Oh, you reign forevermore.
You reign forevermore.
Your kingdom is everlasting forever and ever.
You reign forever.
Almighty God,
Almighty God.
all powerful, Almighty God.
All powerful
You
God.
alone, you
receive
alone
all
are worthy of all the praise.
forever.
Almighty Father, 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 Father. Hey, hey.
All powerful God.
You are worthy to receive all the praise. You reign.
Forevermore.
Oh, Jehovah reigns. Jehovah reigns. Jehovah reigns. Jehovah reigns. You are lifted up. You are lifted up. You are lifted up.
Above other gods.
Jesus, you are lifted up. Jesus, you are lifted up. Oh, Jehovah reigns. Jehovah reigns. In the heavens you reign. On the earth you reign. You are lifted up. You are lifted up. You are lifted up.
Above other gods.
Jesus, you are lifted up. Jesus will lift you 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 up.
Above other gods.
My case is different. Let the Redeemer of the Lord say so. Please, let's be seated. Shortly, we'll be rising up to give God quality thanks this morning. We'll be saying, Father, we thank you for divine protection over our lives, families, properties, and all our endeavors since the year began, making the plans of the enemies of non-effect. Taking our bearing from Psalm 105, verses 13 through to 15, the scripture says, when the children of Israel went from one nation to another, the Bible says, he suffered no man to do them wrong. He rebuked kings for their sake, saying, touch not my anointed and do my prophets no harm. Please, let's be upstanding and let's pray this prayer together. Father, we thank you for divine protection over our lives, properties, families, and all our endeavors since the year began, making the plans of the enemies of non-effect. Almighty God, we give you thanks this morning for divine protection over our lives, over our families, over our properties, and over all our endeavors since the year 2016 began. Thank you for making the plans of the enemies of non-effect over us. Lord, we give you thanks this morning. 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 You have preserved and sustained us by your mighty hand all through the year 2016. Lord, we cannot take your hand for granted. We have returned to say, Father, be thou exalted. We have returned to say, Father, Lord, we appreciate you. We have returned to register our thanksgiving before you this morning for everything you have done for us since the year began, for divine protection over our lives. Lord, we give you praise for divine protection over our family members. Lord, we give you praise for divine protection over everyone and everything that concerns us. Lord, we return the glory to you. Give him thanks this morning. Give him thanks this morning. Give him thanks this morning. Let the Lord God of heaven hear your voice of thanksgiving this morning. Lord, we give you thanks. Jesus, we give you thanks. Lord, we are grateful. Father, we are grateful. Father, we are grateful for your protection over our lives, for your protection over the lives of our family members, for your protection over everything that we have on all sides, for your protection over all our endeavors since the year 2016 began, making the plans of the enemies of none effect. Lord, we magnify your name. Lord, we magnify your name. Lord, we magnify your name. Lo atoto brozozua ya kamblo to alelea baya. Agoa ezo lo ale brozozo le lokobolua. Ezo to alelea mbozozoa. Elia gagabalo lo brebo bozozo lo abala. Lord, we give you praise. You have caused us to stand and to stand strong. Lord, we are grateful to you. We have not gone to the month of December by our own hand, but your mighty hand has sustained us. Your mighty hand has protected us. Lord, we are grateful to you. We give you praise, Lord. We give you praise, Lord. We give you praise, Lord. Lea bozoto lua lekembatua laba. Agoa la lembrozozoa. Baba lolombre baba logoloa. Egegedi ambaba. We've been sleeping since January. You have been waking us up. Who is like unto you, Almighty God? We magnify you, Lord, for your mighty hand of divine protection over our lives, over our families, over our properties, over every of our endeavors. Since the year 2016 began, you have made the plan of the enemies of non-effect over us. Take all our adoration this morning, Lord. Are you thanking him? Are you giving him thanks? Are you giving him thanks? Are you giving him thanks? Almighty God, we are grateful to you. Thank you, Lord Jesus. Blessed be thy name, Almighty God. In Jesus' great name, we have given thanks. Please, you may be seated.
My case is different, and let the name of the Lord say so. Shortly again, we'll be upstanding this morning to say, Father, thank you for supernaturally restoring the glory and color of every winner since the year began, thereby bringing an end to shame and reproach in our lives. In Joel chapter 2, verse 23, all through to 26, paraphrase, say, be glad, ye children of Zion, rejoice in the Lord thy God. He said, and I will restore to you the years that the locusts had eaten, the cankerworms, the caterpillars, and the palmer worms, and the great army which I sent unto you. Please join me this morning, rise upon your feet, because we're going to be appreciating God, saying, Father, thank you for supernaturally restoring the color, the glory of every winner since the year began, thereby bringing an end to shame and reproach in our lives. Lift up your voice if God has restored your color, if God has restored your glory this year. Lift up your voice and begin to appreciate him right now. Father, we are saying thank you this morning for supernaturally restoring the glory and color of every winner worldwide since the year began, thereby bringing an end to shame and reproach in our lives. Lift up your voice, appreciate him this morning. Lord, we thank you from the depth of our heart this morning for supernaturally restoring the glory, restoring the color, the dignity of every winner since the year began, thereby bringing an end to every form of shame and reproach even in our lives. Is somebody thanking the Lord this morning? Lord, we are thanking you. We have come to return all the glory back to you for supernaturally restoring our dignity, restoring our color, restoring even our glory, the glory of every winner since the year began, thereby bringing an end to every form of shame, to every form of reproach, even in our lives. Is somebody truly thanking God? Are you thanking Him? Oh, lift your voice on behalf of every winner worldwide this morning. I appreciate this great God. I appreciate Him from the depth of your heart. He has supernaturally restoring the color, the glory of every winner in this commission this year. Lord, we are thanking you this morning. We are appreciating you from the depth of our heart. We have come like that one leper to say thank you for supernaturally restoring the color, restoring the glory of every winner. Oh, thereby putting an end to shame and reproach in our lives. Are you thanking Him? Are you appreciating Him? The year indeed has been the year of from glory to glory. God has supernaturally restored your color, restored your dignity, restored your glory. Appreciate Him from the depth of your heart. If only you can think, then you can thank Him. Maseke totolambrada. Ekota la busutayaba. Andole kotolambra. Ekondaba. You can thank Him in the language of the Holy Ghost right now. Ayero elado ekotolambado santa katia. Ambrodo yato setea leteko ilato ambola broda igado zozeyaba ebrade. Oh Father, our Father and our God, we are thanking you this morning for supernaturally restoring the glory, restoring the color of every winner since the year began, thereby putting an end to every form of shame and reproach. Lift up your voice and thank Him. Thank Him right now. Thank Him. Thank Him. Appreciate Him. Appreciate Him. God must hear your voice of thanksgiving this morning. Masekotolaba, asendola brade, zonduya, ekrutia, egaduza, bando seteliadaga, ambroda, elada, elekodeya brodeaba, mosota yabada, yekotola, Onda yatosaya mazialobana. Lift up your two hands and appreciate Him. God has heard our voice of thanksgiving this morning. Lord, we give you praise because it is done in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ. Please be seated.
My case is different. Let the Redeemer of the Lord say so. We shall be thanking God. We shall be saying, Father, thank you for the establishment of all our new converts in the faith and in this church since the year began. Let's say amen. Psalm 127, verse 1 to 2, verse 1 specifically, it says, except the Lord builds the house, He said, they labor in vain that builds it. Except the Lord watch over the city, the watchmen are only awake, but in vain. Let's rise up to our feet and let's raise our voices and appreciate God from the depth of our heart. Let's thank Him from the depth of our heart. Father, we thank you. We appreciate you for the establishment of all our new converts in the faith and in this church since year 2016 began. We return all the glory, we return all the honor, we return all the adoration. We celebrate you. We appreciate you. We honor you. We adore you. We magnify your holy name. We give you all the glory. We thank you, Lord, for the establishment of all our new converts in the faith and in this church since this year began. Father, we return all the glory. We appreciate you. We exalt your holy name. Lord, we know that no one can come unto you except drawn by the Father. Lord, you have drawn them to yourself and you have established them by yourself. Father, we return all the glory. We adore you. We magnify your holy name. We give you all the praise, oh Lord. Thank you, everlasting Father, for the establishment of all our new converts in the faith and in this church since this year began. We give you all the glory. We celebrate you. We honor you. We adore you. We magnify your holy name. Men may have invited them. Lord, you brought them by yourself. Men may have invited them. Lord, you established them by yourself. Father, we return all the honor. We appreciate you. We celebrate you. We honor you. We adore you. We magnify your holy name. We give you all the glory. Thank Thank you, Lord. Father, we thank you for the establishment of all our newcomers in the faith and in this church since the year began. Father, be thou exalted and glorified. Be thou exalted and honored. We thank you, Lord. We have laid it to heart to return all the glory unto you. We have laid it to heart to appreciate you, Lord. We bless your holy name. We thank you, Lord, for the establishment of all our newcomers in the faith and in this church since the year began. Be thou exalted and glorified. Be thou exalted and magnified. We bless your holy name. We appreciate you. We honor you. We adore you. We magnify your holy name. Thank you, everlasting Father, for the establishment of all our newcomers in the faith and in this church, the Faith Tabernacle, since the year began. Be thou exalted and glorified. Be thou exalted and magnified. We are grateful. We are grateful. Oh Lord, we are grateful. We bless your holy name. We are grateful. We thank you, Lord. We thank you, Lord. We thank you, Lord, for the establishment of all our newcomers in the faith and in this church since the year began. Father, we give you all the glory. We exalt your holy name. We honor you. We adore you. We magnify your holy name. We celebrate your faithfulness. We are saying thank you, Lord. We are saying thank you, Lord. We are saying thank you, Lord. We see this as your doing, the doing of your mighty hand. We give you all the glory. We bless your holy name. It is marvelous in our eyes. Therefore, we say thank you. We appreciate you. We honor you. We adore you. We magnify your holy name. We celebrate your faithfulness. Thank you, everlasting Father. Thank you, King of glory. Thank you, everlasting Father. Thank you, Lord of Lords. Blessed be thy holy name. Thank you, everlasting Father. Let's appreciate him praying in the spirit right now. Let's thank him in the spirit because we do well by doing so. Irenando sentalia bara, e baba gadaya tagalia garada, e gegene gedege, e brana sugalia, atanda, e runanda zwala talia golopre gedega, a baba barana, e genekusu galia kata, a glakotiga, a brana zolete, e granagosi garia gata gelabronado, e bradabosi lado, engri gadagosi garia gata, alegaro da gazia la palia bradao, e bebe Runade, e granaga sugaria katalia brade, e barana, e rigedo sintalia galabra gazanda, e geleko di breyando, e ridado, angla koti alapa. Thank you, everlasting Father. Blessed be the holy name, Lord. In Jesus' mighty name, we have given thanks. We may be comfortably seated.
My case is different. Let the Redeemer of the Lord say so. In a short while, we'll be rising on our feet to pray, saying, Father, by the Holy Ghost, sanctify my life afresh, so that my still worship can continue to be acceptable unto you. In Malachi chapter 3, verse 3 to 5, paraphrase said, it shall sit as a refiner's fire, that purify the silver and the gold, and we purify the sons of Levi in order for them to offer unto the Lord an offering in righteousness. Without understanding, please rise on your feet, and let's place a demand in heaven this morning. Say, Father, by the Holy Ghost, you are praying for yourself. Sanctify my life afresh, so that my still worship can continue to be acceptable unto you. Lift up your voice and pray that prayer from the depth of your heart, that this morning, by the fire of the Holy Ghost, it will sanctify your life afresh, so that your still worship can continue to be acceptable to him. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, no more wasted still worship. In the name of Jesus, Father, I'm lifting up my voice to you this morning, asking you that you will sanctify my life afresh this morning by the fire of the Holy Ghost. Holy Spirit of God, refine my life, purify my life as silver and gold, so that you can say, I can offer unto you my still worship in righteousness. Purge me as silver and gold in the name of Jesus Christ. I want to offer my still worship to you in righteousness. I want to offer my still worship to you in purity. Therefore, this morning, I'm looking unto you, Holy Spirit of God. You are the fire of the Holy Ghost. You are the fire of God. Purify my life this morning afresh. Purify me afresh. Purify me afresh. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Sanctify my life afresh. Spirit, soul, and body. Sanctify my life afresh. Spirit, soul, and body. So that my still worship can continue to be acceptable unto you. Mantalabaya leyekete. Zeriakato mato zariakate leyekete. Holy Spirit of God, I'm lifting up my voice to you this morning. Father, that you will sanctify my life afresh this morning. In the name of Jesus. So I can continue. So I might still worship. Continue to be acceptable to you. In the name of Jesus Christ. Holy Ghost, sanctify my life afresh. Sanctify my tongue, sanctify my emotions, sanctify my feelings, sanctify my utterance, everything in me, oh God. I hand over to you this morning, Spirit of the living God, that the fire of God will sanctify me afresh this morning. Purify me, cleanse me in and out, in the name of Jesus. So my stewardship can continue to be acceptable. I don't want wasted stewardship from this hour, oh God. Let my stewardship be acceptable to you in the name of the Lord Jesus. Therefore, I'm asking for the sanctifying power of the Holy Ghost. I present my spirit, soul, and body unto you, my Father, asking you that by the power of the Holy Ghost, you will sanctify me afresh. So my stewardship can continue to be acceptable to you, my Father. Le Katosia, Eria Katalaba, Macom Pazotoriala, Le Yeketeziza, Eria Katalabayaga, La Yakatezia. My stewardship must not be seen by man. Le Zatorialaba, my stewardship must be seen by you, oh my Father. Le Katozaria, La Bosaria, Le Yatalabaya, Macom Pato Sakaya. Therefore, this morning, I'm lifting up my voice to you. Le Katosia, Eria Katala, Mayakateke, Le Yekete. That by the Holy Ghost, you will sanctify me afresh, sanctify my life afresh. La yakatosia regada. So my stewardship can continue to be acceptable to you. Le zatoria, la yakateza, eriakapotoria, la yakamantosia, le yeketeza, eriakatuza kamba yakatekete, le zakaka, makanta labosoria, la yakatekete, le yekepokotosia, la zakata labotoria. Holy Ghost, purge me this morning. Purge my life afresh this morning. I present my life to you for purification, for sanctification this morning. Matoza, Eriaka, Layakateza, Eriaka Tupukutu, Mandalaba. Begin to appreciate him, give him thanks, give him praise as others. Blessed be your name, Jesus. Thank you, gracious Father. In Jesus' precious name we are prayed. Please have your seat.
My case is different. Let the redeemed of the Lord say so. Shortly, we'll be rising up to pray, saying, Father, empower me with grace for tireless engagement in advancing your kingdom so I can be listed among the rising stars in this ongoing revival. Can I hear your amen? Daniel chapter 12 and verse 3. Scripture says, and they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as stars forever and ever. Please, let's rise on our feet this morning, lift up our voices, and we are praying personally right now for ourselves, saying, Father, empower me with grace for tireless engagement in advancing your kingdom. Lord, kingdom advancement must not end with me this year. I receive grace on the altar of prayer. He said, let us come boldly to the throne of grace, that we may obtain grace and find help in time of need. Father, empower me with grace for tireless engagement in advancing your kingdom, so I can be listed among the end time stars in this kingdom. Raise your voice. We are praying as passionately as can be for ourselves. Father, empower me this morning with grace for tireless engagement. Yes, I shall not be weary. I shall not be tired. I shall not be frustrated. Lord, I receive grace. I receive empowerment this morning for tireless engagement in advancing your kingdom. Lift up your voice. Let heaven hear you this morning. There is abundance of help. There is abundance of grace. Lift your voice. Tap into the grace that's available on the prayer altar. Father, empower me with grace for tireless engagement. He said, these are they that have continued with me in my temptation. Therefore, I will appoint unto them a kingdom. Lord, I must not miss my appointment as one of the end time stars in the kingdom. Lift your voice. Empower me with grace for tireless engagement in advancing your kingdom, by engaging in kingdom advancement prayers, by engaging in tireless outreaches, by engaging in tireless follow-ups. Lift your voice. Let heaven hear you this morning. You are crying out for grace. Yes, it's available on the prayer altar. It's a come. It's available on the prayer altar. There is grace to help in time of need. Oh yes, you cannot do it in the energy of your flesh. You need the empowerment of the Spirit. Remember, no one can pray for you like you can pray for yourself. If 2017 will be the year of your exemption, your stewardship must be an outstanding one. Lord, I receive grace. There is still room at the top for as many as are interested. Therefore, Lord, I tap into grace on the prayer altar. Lift your voice. Look unto heaven. Look unto him. There is abundance of grace. There is help for as many as needed. He said, come unto me, all ye that are heavy laden. I know how to give you rest. Lord, concerning this matter of kingdom advancement engagement, I need your help. I need your help. Raise your voice. Pray in the language of the Spirit. Rekete zuze epura de kotagelia reskiskata yeprade. All through the year 2017, I shall not be weary. I shall not be tired. Oh yes, that grace is available. I tap into it on the prayer altar. Let God hear your voice. Let God hear your voice. He's able to give you abundance of grace. He's able to give you abundance of grace for tireless stewardship. Now begin to thank him, because that grace is already released. Thank him this morning. Thank him this morning. Thank him this morning. Father, we thank you. In Jesus' precious name we pray. Please be seated.
My case is different. Let the Redeemer of the Lord say so. In this service, it is testimony time. Please be attentive to these documented testimonies and be blessed. Number 1, 32 years marital spell destroyed. Are you clapping for Jesus? Can make it better. I have come to give glory to the God of this commission who surprised me. I came to Shiloh 2015 single. In my family, I didn't witness any marriage ceremony, and I was stagnated maritally for 32 years. My father's elder sister vowed that my mother's children will never succeed. But when I came to this commission, I believed God on every prophetic word that came from the altar. During the 21 days prayer and fasting of 2015, I camped in Canaan land. I told God that if he had done that for people in this commission, he must do mine. And God did it. I met my husband in September 2015. Our introduction came up December 30th, 2015. And we got married on 24th and 26th November 2016. I have come to return all the glory to God. Put those hands together for Jesus. The testifier is Mrs. Gladys. Thank God. Number 2, healed of hepatitis B. I was diagnosed of hepatitis B in October 2015 during the medical checkup for a new job. Since then, I trusted God for a miracle. I remembered someone once shared a testimony of being healed of hepatitis B, but in my mind, I felt it was not a big deal. I didn't know I was infected with same. I asked for God's mercy, forgiveness, and healing. I engaged in Wonder Double agenda, but during the final week of the last phase for 2016, I made sure I engaged in 1 hour kingdom advancement prayer daily. At the last feet washing service of the year, I wrote it down, request, but didn't have the courage to go to the clinic after about 4 tests this year already. At Shiloh, I also wrote it down during one of the services as instructed. Lo and behold, on December 19, I went for a test and hepatitis B positive became hepatitis B negative. Put those hands together for Jesus. Indeed, my case is different. What the doctor said was permanent and can only be managed has been completely removed. I return all the glory to the God who is a doer. Showumi, OY, is a testifier. Please rise on your feet, lift your hands to heaven, and give him thanks for his great acts amongst us.
If your thanksgiving is to God, stretch your hand to heaven and your voices be lifted to the Lord as you give him thanks this morning. Appreciate him and glorify his name. He's worthy of all the praise and of all the glory. Father, we give you thanks and we give you praise. We glorify your holy name. You are worthy of all the praise. You are worthy of all the glory. Thank you, mighty God. We celebrate you. You are faithful. You are good. We glorify your holy name. Blessed be your name, Jesus. Now let's begin to speak to him, asking that he speaks to us this morning. Lord, by your word, speak directly to me this morning. Transform me, open a new chapter to my life, to my destiny, by the authority of your word. I ask, oh Lord, that you open my ears to hear, my heart to receive, and my life for change. As your word comes forth this morning, let there be the enforcement of transformation, establishment of transformation. Blessed be your holy name, Jesus. We thank you and we glorify your name. In Jesus' precious name we have prayed. Father, we thank you today for the privilege of standing again in your presence. Thank you because we know that we have called upon you this morning and indeed you have heard us. We give you the praise and the glory. Now, Lord, send your word in our direction. By your word, establish our change of level. We give you thanks and we give you the praise. In Jesus' precious name we have prayed. Somebody believe, say loud amen. Give Jesus a big hand and please be seated in his presence. My case is different, and let the Redeemer of the Lord say. Yesterday we began looking at this line of exhortations, understanding the mystery of thanksgiving. Understanding the mystery of thanksgiving. In Mark chapter 4 verse 11, the Bible says, unto you it is given to know the mysteries of the kingdom, but unto them that are without, these things are in parables. Mysteries refer to hidden secrets, and the secrets of God are largely hidden in kingdom simplicities. In other words, they look utterly simple, but they are ultimately powerful. And it is understanding that determines the power of every kingdom engagement. And one of those mysteries of the kingdom is the mystery of thanksgiving. We saw from the book of Psalm chapter 69, verse 30 and verse 31, it said, I will praise the name of the Lord with a song. I will magnify him with thanksgiving. He said, this also shall please the Lord better than an ox or bullock that had horns and hoofs. We saw there that thanksgiving magnifying God's blessings on our lives. Magnifying God's blessings. Putting focus on God's blessings. Refusing to take for granted any one of God's blessings. Making a big deal out of God's blessings. That's what Thanksgiving is all about. It is refusing to neglect God's blessings. Ensuring we appreciate God's blessings. This is what Thanksgiving is all about. And the scripture tells us, it said, this also shall please the Lord. So thanksgiving invokes God's pleasure. God gets pleased at our thanksgiving. God gets excited at our thanksgiving. And it is therein that the power of thanksgiving lies. Because when God is pleased, he ensures man's pleasure. When God is pleased, he ensures man's pleasure. So we began to uncover the reality of thanksgiving and what it carries in store for the believer. This morning, I'd like us to examine this very important fact as it relates to thanksgiving. And that is the fact that our God is never late. The year may be running out, but God is not out of time. Our God is never late. The Bible says in the book of Hebrews chapter 11 and verse 11 concerning Sarah, it said, by faith, it said, Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed and was delivered of a child when she was past age, when people said her time has gone, because she judged him faithful who had promised. Even when people write you off, as long as you are connected to the living God, your case is not closed. That's what God is saying. She was past age, naturally speaking, but the scripture made it clear that she judged God faithful. I'd like you to recognize that 2016 is closing, but God's chapter has not closed. And what God is saying is simple. Judge him faithful, that what he had promised, he will still yet deliver. In the book of John chapter 11, verse 21 to 25, Jesus came across the tomb of Lazarus. And then Martha said unto the Lord, if thou hast been here, in other words, it's like you are a bit late. If thou hast been here, my brother would not have died. And then Jesus, but then she said, but I know that even now, whatsoever thou wilt ask of God, God will give it unto thee. And Jesus said unto her, thy brother shall rise again. You see, as long as you don't close your case, God keeps it open. He said, thy brother shall rise again. I know that if you were here, this situation would not have been like Martha was saying. But I know that even now, the case is not closed. I know that even now, the miracle can still be delivered. I know that even now, the testimony can still come. That's what she said. I know that even now, God is a God that never runs out of time. He never runs out of time. God is not time bound. God is in charge of time. I'd like you to recognize that the creator of time is God, and therefore the ultimate manager of time is God. There is no one that can manage time like God. God can put inside one day what it will take 1,000 years to do. For 1,000 years like a day, and a day like 1,000 years. He lives in the realm of timelessness. I'd like you to be rest assured that whatever is left of your blessing for this year, God is simply saying the case is not closed yet. Somebody believe it, say loud, amen. But then how do you bring what God has said to pass? What is the last to turn, the last digit to press? Thanksgiving will always quicken the dead back to life. Whatever looks like a dead case, Thanksgiving will always quicken it back to life. You recall in that same chapter of John, chapter 11, verse 39 down to verse 44, Jesus appeared at the tomb of Lazarus when everybody began to say his body was taken. I thank you. I thank you because you hear me always. Even when they say cases are closed, you are still working on my behalf. You hear me always. He said, and for these ones do I declare this. He said, Lazarus comfort, and he that was dead, who has been written of 4 days ago. He said, he came out of the tomb, bound hands and foot, and he said, loose him and let him go. I'd like you to be assured, whatever represents a case that seems closed, before this year 2016 rolls out on Saturday, you, like Lazarus, it was said, you will also be saying, loose him and let him go, because your testimony shall be ultimately delivered. I thought somebody was shouting a louder amen. You look at the story of Abraham, the same can be said. Romans chapter 4 verse 17 to 21, the Bible makes it clear to us concerning Abraham. It said, as it is written, I've made thee a father of many nations, before him whom he believed, even God, who quickened the dead and called the things that be not as though they were. He said, who against hope believed in hope, that he might become the father of many nations, according to that which was spoken, so shall thy seed be. How did he hope against hope? He said, be not weak in faith. He considered not his body that was now dead when he was about 100 years old, neither the deadness of Sarah's womb, but he staggered not at the promise of God through unbelief, but he was strong in faith, doing what? Giving glory to God. Do not allow for any negative considerations. These are the times that you find the enemy giving whispers into your ear. Look at your condition. Look at your state. This thing, you have prayed. It has not changed. Look at where you are. And God is saying, don't give it consideration. Don't give it attention. Don't pay attention to your condition. Give focus to his promise. Don't pay attention to your condition, but rather give focus to his promise. And when you see his promise, knowing that he that has spoken is faithful, the Bible said, Sarah, judge him faithful, it will end up releasing praise from your heart. I don't know what case looks closed around you, but God is saying, I have too much time to deliver it into your hand. And I see it being delivered supernaturally in the name of Jesus. In Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 11 and verse 12, he said, all of these dry bones are the whole house of Israel. For they say we have no hope and we are cut off all our parts. But say unto them, prophesy to them. He said, tell them that I will cause you to come out of your graves. So no matter how buried the case is, God says, I am assuring you that you are coming out of that grave. I see you coming out in Jesus' name. Now, very quickly, what kind of thanksgiving pleases God? If thanksgiving is the key, what kind of thanksgiving pleases God? How can I thank God effectively in order to please him ultimately? I'll look at 3 things quickly. Number 1, you must thank him with your heart. You must thank him with your heart. Whatever does not originate from the heart does not have connection with God. The Bible says in the book of Jeremiah 17 verse 10, I, the Lord, I search the heart. I try the reins to give to every man according to his ways and the fruit of his doings. In Ephesians chapter 5, the Bible tells us, beginning from verse 18, be not drunk with wine, he said, but be filled with the Spirit. He said, speaking to yourself in psalms, in hymns, in spiritual songs, and making melody in your heart. It must originate from the heart. It must originate from the heart. The eyes of God go to and fro, and whose heart is perfect. God is interested in the state of our heart. Number 2, we must thank him with facts. The Bible says, forget not all his benefits. Thank him with facts. Psalm 103 verse 1 to 3. Bless the Lord, O my soul, and all that is within me, bless his holy name. He said, bless the Lord, O my soul, and forget not all of his benefits. So thank him with facts. Begin to list out his doings as you recall them in the various departments of your life. Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 12, the Bible says, beware lest you forget. So begin to thank him in detail for his doings in the various departments of your life. And number 3, thank him with assurance. thank Him with assurance. It is called the sacrifice of praise, the fruit of our lips. Hebrews chapter 13 and verse 15. That is thanking Him specifically for things that are on the way to come. When you thank Him with assurance, then that which is left to be done is supernaturally delivered. What happened to Abraham? He was giving God the glory. Why? Because he was fully persuaded that that which he had spoken, it was also going to be delivered. Is always going to deliver. Is somebody here assured of God's doing in his or her life? Does somebody here have some facts of what God has done in his or her life? Does somebody here have a reason to give God thanks this morning? Would you rise on your feet with me? Lift up your right hand to heaven. Lift your two hands to heaven right now. And begin to, from the depth of your heart, give God thanks with specific facts. Specific facts. Give Him thanks for what He has done. With specific facts, list out His doings. Begin to decree and declare that which He has done in your life. My Father, I thank You for the blessing of health, for the blessing of strength. I've come this morning. I'm grateful. I am thankful. Are you thanking God this morning? Are you thanking God this morning? For vitality, Lord, for soundness of mind and of body, for soundness in my spirit man. I thank You for Your blessing in every area of my life. You have not permitted me to lack for anything. I've come today with gratitude in my heart. I celebrate You, Lord. Embanando recopenenketesia. Are you giving God thanks this morning? Do it with facts. Alaru zambelekete predia, alo shambredia kanatalo, imbrande reketeziangata. You have not allowed tears to be shared. You have allowed laughter to be multiplied. I've come this morning with gratitude in my heart, Lord, for all of Your mighty doings, for all of Your glorious acts, for all of Your wondrous, all the wondrous happenings. I celebrate You, Lord. I thank You, Lord, for the blessing of Your good hand upon my life. I thank You for the release of grace. I thank You for the release of oil. I celebrate You. I glorify You for peace on every side. Peace in the family, peace in the ministry, peace in the assignment, peace on every side. I glorify Your name for joy unspeakable that has been full of glory. I thank You for the sustenance of spiritual fire. I glorify Your name. You are worthy of all the praise. Are you thanking God? Lift up your voice and let God hear the voice of your appreciation. My Father, I am grateful. Eromana katoshada ila gagagaga empranonte lekito zepika alereko tampandi akaradosha. You can do it in the spirit. Ila la katomba ekeken kredike nomanande erosha mananana anonga labarada le prondereke tomana ereke nomana le rusha pendeleke rendo rabanato ilianga rabando rabosha pendelike tozuzia. My Father, I am grateful. Ilo preneketona ilala la barade ke reambaradia kanazosa e champene ke feriambaradoka e lerompendre di katata. You can begin to thank Him with assurance for that which is to come. Begin to thank Him with assurance. Just like Martha said, even now, I know that even now, the blessings that I left are making their way to me. I know that even now, that which is anticipated is still on its way to being delivered. I know that even now, whatever belongs to 2016 is not being transferred to 2017. I know that even now, every blessing that was prophesied is still coming to pass. I know that even now, time has not run out. I know that even now, the blessings are still manifested. I know that even now, the benefits are still being delivered. Are you speaking to the Lord right now with assurance and thanksgiving? I refuse to stagger in unbelief, but I stand strong in faith, giving glory to You, my Father, giving glory
to you, my Father. Le raba neketeli ambarado, le kasata teteketo, imbrana kata, ilo shapa, embra neketo zuzia, elele kerembonata, iliangaradoka. I know that even now, it is being delivered. Even now, the testimony is manifesting. Even now, the miracle is being delivered. Lift up your hand to heaven and now glorify His name. Celebrate the King of Kings. He's worthy of all the praise. Father, thank you. Blessed be your name, Jesus. In the name of Jesus, we have prayed. Somebody believe, say the loudest amen. I said, somebody believe, say the loudest amen. As you have spoken in His ear, so is He delivering into your hands. In Jesus' precious name we have prayed. Say with me, my God is not out of time. Like you mean, my God is not out of time. Even now, it will still come to pass. Even now, it will still be delivered. Even now, my story will still change. Even now, my testimony is coming to pass. Somebody believe it, say the loudest amen. One more time, lift your hand to heaven and glorify His name. Father, we thank you. We don't take your hand for granted. You are worthy of all the praise. Blessed be your holy name. Blessed be your holy name. Thank you, mighty God. Blessed be your name. In Jesus' precious name we have prayed. Today, go in peace. Your return this day shall be with testimony. The Lord said, He said, that I will cause these blessings to pursue and overtake you. You shall be blessed in the city. You shall be blessed in the field. Your storehouses shall be blessed. Everything around you shall be blessed. All through this season, the remaining days of this year, you will never run blessing dry. In the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, your children are decreed blessed. Your spouses are decreed blessed. The works of your hands are decreed blessed. In the name of Jesus Christ. There are many who close shops, close businesses and so forth for one day or the other. But by the time you return, you are returning to meet blessings there. In the name of the Lord Jesus. There shall be no mishap anywhere around you. It shall only be good news from far and from near. In the name of the Lord Jesus. So shall it be. In Jesus' precious name we have prayed. And somebody believe, say the loudest amen. Remember, like we're always charged, never take spiritual vacation, personally and otherwise. Make sure you continue engaging the altar of prayer, engaging particularly in Thanksgiving in this season. Stand from time to time all through this season, and as you do, I see the Lord rewarding you in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Let us share the goodness of the Lord together. Surely God's goodness and mercy shall follow us all the days of our lives, and we shall dwell in the presence of the Lord forever. Amen. Peace. My case is different, and let the Redeemer of the Lord say, congratulations, somebody as you go, be blessed.